people to eat. However, a new genetically engineered pet fish called the glowfish is not regulated. And we talked about this when we talked about GFP. So what do you think? Do you think the US government should regulate all genetically modified organisms, even pets that are not going to be released into the wild? Or potentially they could be, and that's why you think that they should be regulated. All right, take a second and think about it. Okay, this is an interesting one. Researchers have injected human genes into the fertilized eggs of domestic animals, for example, pigs. One reason for making such a pig is to make drugs in the milk of the pig. Another reason is to make internal organs adapted to humans. Hemophilia is a disease where people cannot stop bleeding. Do you agree or disagree that it is acceptable to make genetically modified pig that would produce medicine for a person with hemophilia if the pig did not die? So we are saying in this circumstance, the pig is not harmed. Do you agree or disagree that it is acceptable to make a GM pig that would produce medicine for this person or these people with hemophilia if it was possible? All right, stop and think about it. Think about questions you still have. What research do you need to do? Okay. Heart transplants occur infrequently because donor human hearts are very rare. Is it acceptable or not acceptable to genetically modify pigs for heart transplants in humans? What do you think about that one? All right, so those are all the ethical questions I have for you today, but there's plenty more. So as you think of more of them, or as you hear something in the news that might have a biotechnology and ethics component to it, feel free to bring it to class, and I'm happy to have these discussions with you. Again, I'm not here to provide you with the answers, just to hopefully get you to ask more questions. All right, thanks, guys.
Okay. Thank you for listening. And I'm sure that has already provoked quite a number of thoughts in your mind. And also today, I'm not here to provide answers. No. I just want to provide you with the information for you to read. The lecture that I'm going to present, actually, it's not a lecture I prepared. It's a lecture I found online. But I thought it covered everything. So I'll just present it online. And if you want to access it, I'll just give you the link because I don't have the rights to it. But I thought it important to continue provoking our thinking. I always tell you, if you have to make decisions, make them based on knowledge, the knowledge you have, not on emotions. Be able to argue your points. You know what is important, you know what is needed, go ahead. Make the right decision based on the right information. So I think I'm now going to get the lecture. And as I said before, it is not my lecture. It is, I have borrowed it. So I'm just going to show it to you from an online platform. And then from there, I can send you a link for you to have a look at, and for you to be able to, to use it to add to your knowledge. So let me upload it. Let me see whether I can upload it. I just hope I'll be able to do so. Can you see my screen? Can you see my screen?
Yes.
Okay, great. Yeah, so this lecture, I think it's offered in the University of Mauritius. It reminds me that at least I've been privileged to be at this university. And yeah, it's a beautiful place. So I just want to share this lecture. And as I said, it's not my lecture. I haven't prepared it. but I think it's good to share it. And then from there, I'll give you a link. So I'm still sharing it from the online platform. And it's just about what are ethics. It just starts by defining ethics. And it's there, the act of defining what is, ethics is basically the act of defining what is morally right or wrong. And also it assesses the reasoning behind our decision. What made you think it is right, or what made you think it is wrong? So this includes the concepts and principles that are employed to justify our moral choices and actions. And we know that this also differs based on culture, based on religion, based on so many things. But I think we must accept that there are those things that human beings accept universally and say, yeah, this is wrong. Like when you say killing someone, it doesn't matter which culture or religion or whatever it is, that is wrong. And that is why you even find in the constitutions, in the laws of all countries, killing, stealing, and such things are basically morally wrong. So when you look at the ethics or aspects of biotechnology, what exactly will you be thinking at? You'll be thinking about ethics in terms of food, in terms of the law, in terms of the environment. You'll also be thinking developing countries and poor people, and you'll also be thinking about medicine. So in terms of ethical and legal introduction, you realize that, for example, when a product is released or an activity, you may have no consensus over the risks of a product or activity. That means these people will be saying this thing has this risk, another group will be saying there's this kind of risk. So people don't necessarily agree, yeah, I think this is the risk. So whenever then you go to even a trade dispute, for example, one country restricts, let's say like one country can decide, we are not buying this product. We don't want it in our country. While the other one says, oh, this thing is allowed in our country, let's go ahead, let's buy it, let's make use of it, and that kind of thing. There's also the issue of right or wrong. And basically this is decided by international law. And then of course you can come to the issue of restrictions. It should be implicit from one country to another, or explicit exception. So I think this, the issue of ethics, especially when the legal, where there are so many aspects to it. And I think in most cases, you hardly ever reach a consensus. So what you see at times even being given as laws, basically at times some guidelines, but really at times no fast in hand rule about that. So at times you can have forms of exception, and between democracy and science. Democracy, of course, we know it's a political system where it's a government for the people, by the people, people ruling themselves, and that kind of thing. And at times, you can have an exception on this based on when there is a clear and scientific position concerning a good or an activity. The trading systems must respect the views of the population of the state. Okay, so you cannot force people. And I want to take an example of even the vaccines. Okay, although it's not a trade issue. I think every country that has purchased a vaccine, it's been up to them to decide. It's been up to them. Nobody has been forced to whatever. If the population says we do not want a vaccine, then that is respected. Of course, there are repercussions, okay? It is wrong to impose unsafe or undesirable products. And the same comes to GMOs. And that's why I think what happens, most countries take a lot of time, a lot of negotiations, a lot of discussions before they decide to either take up a GMO or not to take it up in their country. You can't force it on them. The other thing, you can have an exception based on science. And when it's science, attempts, they are unproved dangers. They are dangers in that product. It has not been proved, and yeah, nobody is sure. So lack of scientific proof, you can have an exception based on that. There's no proof. Then there's also, remember the principles we talked about, the precautionary approach. Attempts you're not sure, but then you say, okay, based on that, we are not sure. So can we take a precautionary approach? We will still not maybe accept because we are not sure. I'm seriously trying to think about the issue of the vaccines. You know, there has been some repercussions. Some people have suffered very bad effects. Some people have died. But still, people have been told, okay, the benefits outweigh the risk. So let's go ahead, let's get this vaccine, and that kind of thing. So there's still quite a lot that is out there. So let's look at democracy and GMOs. Democracy, basically, we are talking about populations, people. What are the people's views? So the views of the population should be respected. That means if a population says no to GMOs, respect it. Yeah. If an agreement contains a clause allowing one party to derogate or when the majority wishes to, then it very deserves to be discussed in terms of laws. If one country wants to sort of dismiss the majority of the wishes, then this is not an agreement at all, and it cannot be considered. So we can't say also democracy alone cannot justify derogations from the World Trade Organization law. When we come to World Trade Organization, we know that people get into this organization, there are agreements, okay? But at times, I think populations just feel, and I'll tell you what, in most cases, when it comes to Africa and the less developed country, I think most of the times we find ourselves on the receiving end. Probably it's our people who represent us. They're not able to negotiate strongly enough, so they just get overpowered and that kind of thing. Because remember, all this GMO thing is also business. Don't forget that. Let it not be lost on you. This is trade. Yeah, this is trade. This is business. These are money-making channels. So when it gets to the World Trade Organizations, that kind of thing, at times democracies don't want this, then it becomes a bit difficult. But it should be always, whatever happens, even in the World Trade Organization, they should be politically realistic. And the population, if the population feels that WTO is wrong, then the government should perhaps leave or renegotiate the terms of their membership. That is what I was saying before. At times is because our governments, especially in the third world countries, they are not strong enough to negotiate for us. They're not strong enough to get into to get good deals, okay? Or maybe they just get intimidated or overwhelmed. So they end up being on the receiving end. And if the population of that country basically feels no, and they feel the WTO is wrong, then they can decide we are leaving the WTO, we are leaving this organization, or they can decide to renegotiate the terms. Okay. When it comes to science, and this is especially GMO, this is where the uncertainty, whatever. So, number one, the first that an event is theoretically possible but has not occurred. What are the possibilities of a GMO causing A, B, C, and D, for example? Then you say, okay, there is a possibility of this happening, but so far it has not occurred. Yeah. So if a generation or two have eaten GMOs without identifiable consequences, this will mean that there's no harm to health. That is what they say. But remember, there's that limitation. The time span is too small. Okay, time span for health, that is too small. You need so many years to determine whether actually that GMO has an effect. Okay, so what is the outcome of such a scientific debate? The outcome is we don't know. We just don't know. And that is the truth. We just do not know. Now, so what do we do? So most of the times people are taking risks. So what's the morality of taking a risk? There should be a balance between possible gains versus possible harms. Okay, e.g., the profits to be made or lives saved through greater production versus cost or harm of things that went wrong, for example. These decisions are dependent on various benefits and harms. And I'll give you a very good example, the vaccines. And I just use the debate that's being used. It is true there are risks. When you're taking a vaccine, there are some risks. But what are we being told? The benefits outweigh the risks. Okay. So the risks are what we call rare occurrences. Are they there? Yes. Are they occurring? Yes, but they are very rare. So should we ditch this kind of vaccine? No, because so many more people are also benefiting from it. Yeah, so that's the kind of debate, and that's what I'm trying to bring now to really a real life situation. So you have to reflect on different worldviews at different levels, okay? So that at the end of the day, you'll be able to decide the moral character on GMO views. Okay, what really is the gain, and what really is the risk? Okay, let's now look at the issue of food, the problem of food security and the poor, because a lot of GMO food also revolves around this. What are the facts that we have? There are approximately 600 million poor people in the world, and approximately 40,000 die each day due to malnutrition, and 50% are children. That is not a very pretty picture. Those are disturbing facts. So what are the limiting resources? It is food production. For food production, it is land and water. So what solution is there? To increase the yield on the available land, because we are not going to remember land is finite. So we are going to make the land produce more. What are we going to do? We are going to use biotechnology. So in short, we said the Green Revolution was not enough to eradicate poverty. The Green Revolution is also what we call the Agrarian Revolution, where man started cultivating crops and producing very high intensity and producing a lot. But that was not enough. We still need another technology to take us to the next level. Why the population of the world has increased, and yet the land has not. And then we are faced with all these other problems. So what do? We need to increase food production in developed countries for export at a price, that the poor can afford. So what does that mean? We make food affordable and align it with their purchasing power. Now, the least developed countries where poverty is most rampant do not have the necessary research tools and extension facilities to increase their production. They don't have that. So the accessibility problem is what has turned many people against GM crops, who claim that this technology rather benefits multinational corporations than feeds the poor. Okay. Of the crops of the poor that include, these are the crops that the poor people would probably eat. There is cassava, there is rice, there is millet, there is sorghum, sweet potatoes, yams, legumes. Of all those, it's only rice that has benefited from biotechnology. And I think we all by now know about the golden rice. So in developing countries, as usual, there is a lot of fear of biotechnology, GMOs, and people are hesitant. But I think the preparer of this slide forgot to say that it's not only in the developing countries that people fear biotechnology. It's actually, in fact, it's more in the West. People are more aware of these crops, and people are more concerned, actually, more than even us, okay? So Then we come to the implementation, the regulatory or economic issue. So there are more regulatory than economic issues in developing countries. For example, there's the importance of risk assessment of GMOs. And we know that these studies they are very costly, and this would mean like when it's for food, for food crops and maybe animals, CALRO has to do a lot of research, risk assessment, and that kind of thing. Then, of course, there is the UNEP guidelines on biosafety details, and poor countries and some developing ones cannot access the impact of GMO and whatever they cannot assess. They're not able to assess what the impact would be. They don't have the necessary skills and technology to say, fine, we have tried growing this crop, and these are findings, these are the impact, and this is what we can do to minimize risk. They're just not able to do that. Now, international companies do not tend to market GM products that have gone through regulatory procedures. Yeah, and this is also a problem. So there are transitory issues as countries of import may not have the same regulatory requirements as the countries of export. Yeah, where is that food coming from? Where do you want it to go? Do the two countries share in their regulations? In one country, the regulations might be, well, very loose. But in the other countries, it might be very stiff. Okay. So this already hinders trade in itself without even having anything else. This in itself hinders trade and hinders, it hinders trade and it hinders agreement. So what ends up happening is that there is a lot of suspicion and yeah, people, they are not very sure. They're just not very sure. And of course, you know, it all goes back to trade. It impacts trade. So what are the different aspects in developing countries? There's the issue of empowerment. Yeah. There's the issue of exploitation. There's the issue of research and development for agriculture. And if at all, this can positively actually support biotechnology can be supported by research and extension. If at all we have very, very good research and development for agriculture. And I think for Kenya, like HARO is one of the most productive research institutes. And I believe if the government is able to support them, and if they can work together with the private sector, then I think we can move forward. We can make our own decisions concerning whatever. And decisions, as I said before, they have to be based on knowledge. Have we tried this crop? Yes. What are its impacts? What are its impacts? Are they good for our country and that kind of thing? Of course, above all things or below all these things, these are socioeconomic issues. So do they hinder export? Can a case of a decrease in export of sugarcane since the high fructose corn syrup was developed? This is a case, and I'm not going to go into it. There's another one. There's oil from coconut palms in Philippines has decreased in production, and transgenics in the US are producing better yields. And I don't want to get into that. So what is happening in the US? You've got these transgenics. Transgenics are basically products that have been genetically modified. Of course, they are producing better yields than the natural coconut palms in the Philippines, which are actually decreasing in production. So the question is, which one should we go for? Should we go for the GMOs, which have been tweaked? Nowadays, we use the word tweak, which have been tweaked or adjusted genetically to produce better yields, probably maybe even at a shorter time span. Then of course there's the issue of intellectual property rights in developing country. Then there's also the issue of genetic erosion that is very, very serious. For example, is the loss of genetic diversity, especially the loss of individual genes and combination of genes. That's a big issue. And I think, well, even when, after all is said and done, that will always remain an issue. The genetic erosion and yeah, this is definitely a risk because what you do in biotechnology, you are sort of designing what you want to produce. So you are moving away from a large number of varieties to a smaller number of new varieties. Yeah, so you are risking the local varieties. Okay, so what does that mean? After some time, you may completely wipe out the local varieties, actually completely wipe them out, and replace them with the improved or exotic varieties, and that's a loss. Then there's also the crop genetic diversity. So loss of particular genetic varieties in favor of others. For example, banana, wheat, and rice. I didn't know that there's a lot of genetic improvement that has been done in banana. And wheat also, there's a lot of genetic. And one of the things that people are saying that nowadays we have a lot of issues where people have gluten intolerance, something that was not there in the past. And one of the things that people are attributing this to is actually all those genetic manipulation. They're saying this is actually the cause of what has, this is the cause of all those problems that people have nowadays. Then the issue of biodiversity. Can we collect plant materials from other countries and then patent them? Of course not. So should countries have, because what happens, and it's a shame that we do not have this topic. The CBD, the Convention on Biological Diversity, has a lot on this, because what happens, people come bioprospecting, maybe scientists from the West, they come and pick up something from Africa, they go back home, they study it, they make a product and they patent it. Okay, so the question is, can we collect plant materials from other countries and then patent them? Is that ethical? Should countries have compensation for their indigenous knowledge? Okay, because we also full of indigenous knowledge in this country. We have people who are doing herbal medicine. They have a lot of information on our plants and that kind of thing. Should this traditional knowledge be patented? Okay, those are now issues. Those are, and this especially in the developing countries. For example, turmeric has been long used by the indigenous people, but it was patented by researchers. So can you imagine? This was part of traditional knowledge, especially in India. They always use turmeric for so many things, for healing, for treating, for everything. But now the researchers have patented it. Is that right? Is that ethical to do that? And at the end of the day, there's the issue of liability. Should operators be liable during production, culturing, storage, handling, use, destruction? I mean, in the entire value chain, who bears the liability should anything go wrong? Whom are we going to pass the buck to? There's also the issue of centers of origin. There's limitation of farmers to use modified organisms that are not from their centers of origin, since no problems have been posed for the case for maize, and scientists endorse the use of new varieties in centers of origin. Centers of origin is basically where is that GMO coming from. So if it's from a certain area, then use it there. There's also the issue of monitoring. Should there be international monitoring, or should a country just do its own monitoring? There's also the issue of uniformity. Should there be uniformity in regulations of different countries to prevent discrimination? Are there protocols? Are there baselines? You know, quite a bit. So let's look at our genetically modified foods now. So it is now clear, now you know that about 75% of processed foods in the US contain some GM ingredients. And that is why most people nowadays are moving away from processed foods. Those people who want to, of course, not everybody, those people who want to eat healthy, they're just saying a big no to processed foods. Keep away from processed foods. Eat what you can cook at home, use the natural ingredients to cook, the vegetables and everything. And these foods include everything from crackers, breakfast cereals, cooking oils, all those. Yeah, they have now been genetically modified. The most common GM foods are soy. So there's cotton. Cotton is okay because we don't eat it. There's canola oil. I know it's very famous here, everything, but most of that in the UK, 75% almost, is genetically modified. There's sugar beets, so there's sugar. There's Hawaiian papaya, there's alfalfa, there's squash. I think our papaya is still very natural, so it is still very safe to eat it. Now, advances in biotechnology now allows production of plants with novel traits such as a longer shelf life, increased nutrient content, and drought resistance. The advent of GM crops provide new opportunities for increasing agricultural production and feeding the world. So what are the potential benefits of GM foods? Genetic engineering can be used to remove genes associated with allergies, e.g., the gene that produces allergenic protein in peanuts can be blocked. Okay, that is good. Then there is the insertion of genes into crops such as rice and wheat to enhance their nutritional value, e.g. the golden rice, which has beta carotene for vitamin A. Then there's also genetic modification can be used to produce healthier foods, e.g. by eliminating trans fats, especially in oils or caffeine. So all these are benefits. They can be used to induce herbicide resistance, leading to decrease of use in herbicides. That one you have looked at before. And then they can be used, introduction of insect and pest resistance. So you can make them to be able to you can also you can also develop them to be able to resist insects and pests. Then there's also the induction of abiotic stress resistance. Can they be induced to resist maybe drought, high temperatures, salinity? We know that now there's also the issue of growing tomatoes in saline lands and that kind of thing. Yeah, it's always an African child with a begging bowl. How sad. I hope this narrative will change one day, and it's not the African children that will be depicted always with a begging bowl, an empty plate. And maybe huyu mtoto ametoka kukula saa hii, amekula tu, but just because amemaliza food, his plate is empty. And yule alichukua picha akasema this child is hungry. Anyway, let's continue with our lecture. So what are the ethical aspects of GM food? There's need to raise agricultural productivity to deal with problems of poverty and food insecurity. That is true. That is a fact. No argument. Now, genetic engineering allows the production of plants with desired traits speedily and at low cost. Okay, that is true. So what are the issues? Number one, unnaturalness, yeah? GM crops are associated with a sense of unnaturalness. It is wrong in itself to alter the essence of a species or to interfere with the natural order. I tell you what, you see, like the tomatoes, if you saw the GM tomatoes, they are so big. They are so huge. Fine. If someone is coming to Planet Earth for the first time, they'll be like, okay, this looks okay. But I think for those people who are used to the natural tomato, the GM tomatoes they just look too big, and then they are so tasteless, And I think based on that, people are just like, oh no, I don't touch this. So that is the one of the aspects, that one of the issues of GM food. The other issue is environmental risks. Genes can flow from modified plants to wild plants, leading to potential threat in biodiversity. That is true. There is also the health risk. Because of the possible harmful effect of GM foods should be properly labeled to allow people to choose whether to consume or not to consume GM foods. People should be made aware. What you're consuming now is GM food. What you're consuming now has not been genetically modified. So what are the health risks associated with GM food? These toxins and engineered genes associated with GM foods may enter the human circulatory system, causing disruption in biological events. Then this GM food may also be linked to gluten disorders. I think I had already said this. Now, a research carried out in 2012 showed that GM corn was linked to rat tumors. Yeah, so rat tumors also tumors to human beings. So I think you can now start seeing what are the issues, what are the concerns. Now, GM foods may also be linked to human breast cancer cell growth, thyroid issues, and infertility. Glyphosate present in GM foods are known to cause malformations and birth defects at high doses. Okay, so and glyphosate is in GM wheat, it's in GM maize, etc. Glyphosate is also linked to weight gain, depression, and Alzheimer's disease. So before we get out of there, for most people who want to eat healthy, these are some of the reasons they're just basically avoiding GM foods, just keeping them at bay. They don't want to eat them. They don't want anything to do with GM food. So let's look at so we are through with food security issues. Let's look at biotechnology and the environment. Now, biotechnological products application to the environment are based on human activities. So they can be directed in two ways: domination and harmonization. For example, biotechnology has been used for various purposes in the environment, such as prevention of infectious vector-transmitted diseases, removal of greenhouse gases, removal or stroke degradation of waste products like oil, I think we looked at that, and reduced impact of pesticides and insecticides. So agriculture and environment, we know they are always closely related. You can't talk about one without mentioning the other. So what are the modern agricultural practices? We have GM crops with insects, disease resistance genes in them. We have GM crops with improved nutrition traits. We also have GM crops with drought and stress tolerance. So those are the major modifications that are being made in plants. So is GM crop production beneficial to humans? It's a big question. So the goals, you want to achieve the green revolution. You want to increase crop production. You want to strengthen food security, and you want to decrease poverty and eradicate resulting infectious diseases. So this is what we aim, or biotechnology is aiming to achieve. So these are the ones that I've just said, they are very beneficial to human beings, very important, and that is what we want. So, but what about the environment? GM crops have been controversial since their production for many, many reasons. So, the concerns are expressed with reference to GM plants are: one, the possibility of horizontal gene transfer of transgenic DNA and the potential to create new viruses and bacteria that cause diseases. Yeah, you are introducing new things, let's say, new things. Let me see. But how are they going to interact? Are they going to, let's look at this, the COVID virus. We started with, I think the original is now being referred to as the alpha. We went to the beta. Now there is also this beta. There's another one I'm forgetting, but now we have the Delta variant, and it is expected that this will continue. So the new, whatever that we are coming up with, the new product, what can they do with they create new? Are we going to have new ones that cause diseases or even cause worse diseases? So that's a question. So what's also the effect of synthesized substances on non-target organisms? For example, you want to keep away a certain kind of insect. That's okay. But what about the others that you're not targeting? Are they at risk? They are at risk. You don't want to destroy them. For example, the bees, but are they also at risk? Okay. There's also the unintentional generation of superweeds and superbugs by evolution. We have looked at this. And I was trying to think about this. I think I was reading about the COVID, the theory that still keeps shaking its head and showing up, that says that COVID was developed in a lab, or it was scientists just working on this virus in the lab. And what they do, they tend to manipulate the viruses. I don't know, they call it functional something. I forget the second name, but it's functional something. Where they try to make the virus even more severe, they try and manipulate it even more. They try and make it very virulent or very weird, and then they try to see how can they deal with it. It's a part of research, and this kind of research happens in labs. I think there are very few labs in the world that are allowed to do that, and these labs must be super secure, super secure for them to be allowed to do this. Because should the culture escape the lab, then we are in trouble. So, and I think that is where the issue of COVID just keeps coming at times. Oh, it didn't come from the lab. But after something, no, I think it came from the lab. So we are still up and down. We're still not sure. So, so there is also at times you continue with research, then you get an unintentional a response or product that you didn't intend to, and there it is. Okay. And of course, there's also the concerns related to food safety. There's a strong belief that GM plants will cause loss of biodiversity. If you look at this picture below, you can see, here, you can see the area under production. It is huge. it is huge. So when you go for GM crops and something happens, you start imagining what area will be affected. So that is a great area of concern. So the issue of monocultures and inbreeding techniques, you simply wipe out the wild strains and over huge areas, okay? There's also the issue of the soil ability dropping and being unable to contain other crops. So once you grow those crops, that's the only crop that soil can sustain. And that should be of great concern. There are also international debates on the rights of farmers and breeders to genetic resources. That is still ongoing. What does the farmer have a say? What's the right of the farmer to the genetic resource? Do they have a right, or the rights only belong to the breeders, the ones that are coming up with the product? So in biotechnology and the environment, ethics with respect to the environment and biotechnology are: one, ecocentric, that is the study of an ecosystem with prevailing concerns. Then biocentric is the ethics concerned with an individual organism, could be a bee, for example. Then there's anthropocentric, ethic views engaged on humans. How is it going to affect humans? How is it going to affect the environment? How is it going to affect specific species? Of course, there are threats on environment and human health. Looked at that. Ethical issues with respect to act of modifying DNA, that has always been an issue. Modifying the DNA of an animal, the DNA of a plant. And then what about the ownership of biological innovations? Can humans own life? Can they say, oh, because we have modified this corn, it is now ours? Are we allowed as human beings to own life? And that kind of thing. So the preservation of flora and fauna is highly debatable when significant and explicit input of views from spiritual, religious aspects and culture are involved. Yeah, you can imagine you almost cannot reach a consensus. Yeah. Some approaches based on what can the environment offer. And so it is protected for food supplies in general, and future generations, e.g. Some Maori tribes have refused any modification of the native forest, and I think they are totally right. They don't want any new thing in that forest. And I think the argument is this forest, naturally, it does what it's supposed to do. Why do you want to modify it? Why do you want to change it? Now, ecocentric approaches improve views on the environment, not by what it can give, but with its intrinsic value, not necessarily what you're getting from it, but just by it being there. Yeah, by just it being there. For example, some Christian traditions see the environment as a creation of God. Yes, and so they don't want any interference with it. Humans are custodians. A custodian is not an owner. You have just been told to take care of it. So some people have just said, no, we do not want any modifications on our environment. We just want it to remain the way it's supposed to be. We just want it to remain the way it's supposed to be. Let's look at medicine. Now, introduction of GMOs in medicines and researches. Now, since the 80s, GMOs have emerged as one of the mainstays of biomedical research. The use of GMO medicine The use of GMOs in medicine and research has produced a debate that is more philosophical in nature. So the ethical issues in introducing GMOs as medicines and research include: number one, violation of natural organisms, just their intrinsic values; tampering with nature by mixing genes among species; objections to consuming animal genes in plants. Then there is the issue of animal rights. You're not allowing the animals to have a say. The animals don't have a say in this. Yeah, so yeah, what are the rights of the animals? Can they refuse? Do they have a right to say no? Now, production of complex pharmaceuticals by enabling the generation of safer and cheaper vaccines and therapeutics area. So the current issues we are dealing with. Insulin was initially derived from pigs and cows, which arose concerns about animal welfare. Yeah? So for animals, for people who are doing, or people who are there to really ensure that animal rights are respected, there is a serious concerns that, for example, that that genetically modified pig that was supposed to produce milk that would be of benefits to humans, or maybe will be able to grow a heart that would be of concern to, will be of use to human transport. That's okay. But what about the pig? Does the pig have a right? Okay. There's also a religious problem. Some religions, e.g. Jews and Hindus, prohibited the use of insulin derived from animal sources. Yeah. And I also know about Muslims. If something I think is developed from the pig, then they are not taking it. So yeah, there are all these issues. I remember there's a supplement called pancreatine. That supplement actually has been developed from the pig's product. It's actually developed from the pigs, and it's written. It's not hidden. Part of it's part of the contraindication. So if you don't take pig products, then it's like stay away from this product because it contains materials that is from pigs. So today's insulin, luckily, is produced through the GM microbes. So in order to overcome these issues of animal welfare and religious problems, today's insulin is produced through GM microbes, which is less likely to cause allergic reactions. Yet, there is the use of genetic engineering in the production of medicines is still an issue, though many people have benefited with none harmed. At times you don't even know when you are taking it. That's the other thing. Yeah, you've taken it, you only come to know later, oh, I mean, that's what I've been taking. Now, I think the issue of gene therapy, in medicine, we touched a bit about it. I will say gene therapy is becoming a treatment option for diseases ranging from rare metabolic disorders to cancer. The introduction of these GM cells into the patient could cure the disease without the need for a matched donor. However, gene therapy has been a controversial subject in the past years. What are the ethical reasons? Cells used for the study are often taken from human embryos. I know the Johnson & Johnson vaccine, that has been one of the issues, that it was developed from an aborted fetus. Yeah, so there's a lot of that now. And the technique will not, the other ethical reason is that the techniques will not be accomplished for the intended purpose. And this replacement tissue will never be grown from a person's own stem cells. So these are ethical reasons. Yeah, but sort of bring big questions and at times not a lot of answers. We also have the genetic modification of insects. Genetic modification of insects has become an important area of research, especially to prevent parasitic diseases. Yeah, I'm laughing, but I'll tell you why. Actually, this is the real reason. Introduction of GM mosquitoes into the wild may someday help eradicate transmission of malaria parasite without widespread use of harmful chemicals or disruption of normal food chain. Yeah, this is what was making me laugh. Just the other day, actually not very many days ago, about 2 or 3 months ago, in the US, the scientists said they now wanted to release the genetically modified mosquitoes in Florida, so that this mosquito may help eradicate the transmission. They may take over, they may be the dominant species and reduce the transmission of malaria. And people are happy now. They say, no way, you are not releasing them here. I don't know. I didn't follow up where that debate went, but yeah, it was very, very interesting. Maybe the next places they'll come is Africa and say, okay, can we release this into the wild and make sure the natural mosquitoes are wiped out and we just have the GMO mosquitoes. Wow. Then there are ethics, of course, concerning animal rights. So the animal rights concern in ethics when discussing animals is their capacity to suffer or feel pain. This concern is weaker for GM mosquitoes. I'm not surprised. Nobody cares whether the mosquitoes are okay or not, they just want them out. But of course, for cows, for pigs, for dogs, for cats, yeah, the human connection is stronger. Then there's also concern that we are manipulating life for human purposes without considering the interest of the animal. That is true. Animals are never asked. I don't think they ever will be asked. Then biodiversity concerns about endangered animals that are used for genetic engineering. Yeah, so I don't know exactly what the issues here are, but what I know is that the scientists have tried to protect the endangered animals and seeing that they are able to ensure their production. The other question is just taking some genetic material from them and using it. So I really am not very sure about that. I need to read a little bit more. So what are the intrinsic concerns for the animals? The pain, the consciousness, yeah. What are the extrinsic values? The status given by human society on some animals. And yeah, some animals are like, yeah, they are super, and some animals are like mosquitoes, for example. Yeah, so yeah, these are attempts I think through them and say, yeah, that's a point. So what about ethics of disease prevention? The widely held ethical principle that human life is worth saving, that I think that is everywhere. Thus, trying to improve existing and develop new approaches for preventing, diagnosing, treating, and controlling infectious diseases that cause human life, that is okay. Methods to achieve these goals, including the extent to which risk to human health, damage to the environment and other living organisms, those are the things. We have gone all the way to the gene level. The question is it worth it? There's a prevention avenue there, saying it is this way. But what are the tools? What tools are we using? And is it worth going all that with them? So what are the social concerns for use of GM in medicines and research? If the blending of animal and human DNA results in chimeric entities possessing degrees of intelligence or sentience, sentimentals, feelings, never before seen in animals, should these entities be given rights and special protection? So if you put a human gene in a pig, and a pig ends up developing intelligence like a human being or feelings like a human being, should these animals be given rights and some special protection? Yeah, because we've transferred that which is ours to them. Before, maybe they had no feelings. Now they start having feelings and they start being intelligent. Are we going to protect them? What if any social legal controls or review should be placed on such research? Yeah. What unintended personal, social, and cultural consequences would result? Yeah, this is the question that nobody answers or nobody is really able to answer. That's why you go back to the beginning. We don't know, we just don't know. Okay, who will have access to these technologies? And how will scarce resources such as medical advances and novel treatments be allocated? Yeah. I think we'll always have to wait for the West to have enough, and the leftovers they can throw at us. And we are seeing that in the vaccines. Until they have vaccinated their people, they are not releasing. In most cases, they are releasing to us what they ordered. The people are not taking. They are about to expire. Then say, "Oh, send them to Africa. They're still suffering." Yeah, those are ethical questions. So other ethical aspects of using GM in medicines and research, for example, medical emergencies. Now this one I don't know about it. The trade-related intellectual property rights agreement, it gives priority to medical emergencies. So I'm wondering whether the vaccines fall under this, but I need to do a bit of research because actually all the COVID vaccines that have been accepted by WHO, they have been accepted on emergency basis, just for emergency use, because there's nothing else. So I think that is good to keep remembering. Then there is also consent from trial participants. All research participants should give informed consent before receiving any intervention that has reasonable risk of causing harm. Then there's the ethics in technological choices, debate on whether we should concentrate limited research costs on developing technologies that rectify problems or on studies to learn how to prevent those problems from occurring. Yeah, I know this is an ongoing debate. Should we put our money in finding solution or to trying to see how can we stop these problems from occurring? Or should we put money into technologies to try and deal with the problem once it has already occurred? So those are also ethical questions that are being asked. Yeah. So what is the conclusion? Conclusion is, according to this, right, biotechnologies are technology that operates at molecular level. When we have accepted that, when we know many applications of it are meant to solve global issues in medicine, food, environment, etc. However, no matter how beneficial it seems, it does come with drawbacks. And I think this is with everything. So modifications brought to living organisms are given strong ethical consideration, regardless of where and how the technology is applied. You know, once you start modifying living organisms, big questions, big concerns come in, big ethical consideration. To be able to counter this, strong scientific proofs and results must be provided on GMOs, on how they interact with the environment, with humans, and also with animals. That one has to be done. There's no shortcut. Okay, so at this point, I'm sure we have listened. And I'm sure this has provoked you. And I'll send you this presentation so that you can access it. You can go through it yourself now and make your notes. I expect you to make notes. We have reached that point. And if at all I ask you, so what's your take? I'll be like, I'm not sure. Yeah. And neither am I sure. But I think one of the principles that have been applied is, which I'm seeing being greatly applied even in the vaccines, is that the benefits outweigh the risks. Okay, for now, we don't know about tomorrow. So these are questions. This is what we can call work in progress. We may not even get the answers tomorrow, but we keep hoping that science will get stronger, will get more robust, will get better information, better products, better directions, and even deeper knowledge on what are the likely outcomes or impact of this technology. I just want us to, I think, watch one. I wonder whether let me see whether we watched. They had another video. Let me see whether it's worth watching it. Let me see.
Around the dinner table or something you want to talk about with your friends.
What? Still searching YouTube?
Okay, let's watch this.
In math with StudyPug, math's best friend. Here's how StudyPug works. Select your course of interest, from elementary to high school math to stats, calculus, and college algebra. Click on the course. There are a wide selection of topics covered by your teacher. If you're not sure about a topic, hover over it to see the examples. You can also use our awesome real-time search. Now, let's select a topic. You're now on the page where the magic happens. On the top, you can quickly jump around to different courses. Here, you can quickly jump to related math topics. There are tons of friendly practice questions for you too. You can try it in two ways. You can first try the practice, and then watch a teacher work through the example step by step. Or you can jump directly to an example walkthrough and learn. If you really don't get the topic, it may be because you missed an earlier class. We've got that figured out for you too. Look, why spend 30 minutes on a lecture when we can help clarify a concept in 5 minutes by walking you through real examples? StudyPug focuses on walking you through the questions that you see in tests and exams. You know, the type that you never learn in class but trip you up in the finals. We have literally thousands of examples and videos covering every type of questions you will probably see, organized according to your class. Then we keep
Imagine a couple blessed with twin babies who are conjoined. Now, if they are to be separated, then one of them is sure to lose life. But raising the conjoined twins is not only difficult for the parents, but even for the kids themselves. So what should be done in this case? These questions give us goosebumps, but they are always a part of the medical field. And how are the answers to such traumatizing questions found? Although we cannot really answer such questions completely, but still to reach the best conclusion, we have the concept of bioethics coming to our rescue. In the previous videos, we have learned about the transgenic organisms which are produced and used for human benefit. But the production of the transgenic animals comes at the cost of disturbing the natural genome of those organisms. So do you think this is morally correct? You may say no. We should not use organisms for a selfish motto. Okay, so how do we test the newer medicines? As the disease or disorder intensity is increasing exponentially, so is the need for newer and more efficient medicines. So if there are no model organisms, then testing medicines will not be possible. So how will new medicines be discovered and used? That indicates the need of using model organisms. So what should be done ideally? There's no single answer for this actually. And hence, for these types of concerns, we have the fields of bioethics. Now let's first understand what bioethics is. It's simply the area dealing with ethical issues in the field of medicine or any other biological studies. Let's learn about bioethics in the field of biotechnology. Let's begin with the same point that we discussed a few minutes ago. Transgenic organisms. Genetic engineering enables us to study the various genetic disorders. And for these types of studies, transgenic animal models like the transgenic mice are developed. These animals, as we know, are called genetically modified organisms or GMOs. And just like animals, plants are also modified. So the transgenic crops produced too have qualities that we desired. Just like the golden rice, for example. It contains wholesome amount of beta-carotene, which is the precursor of vitamin A. When consumed, the compounds get converted to vitamin A in the body. Thus, the transgenic rice variety is a boon to areas hit with vitamin A deficiency. But if the organisms are so beneficial to us, then is their production really an ethical concern? Yes, that's the other side of the coin. GMOs are known to produce several compounds, among which a few can be toxic or allergenic in nature. We cannot ensure that these untraced compounds would not harm us. Thus, there are several hidden risks attached to it. There can be possibilities that the GMOs turn out to be actually more harmful rather than being beneficial. The long-term side effects of GMOs are still unknown. Also, as we know that transgenic organisms have a completely different gene pool from the wild varieties. So at the species level, we disturb the genetic composition of those organisms. Do we really know what impact this can create several years later? What can happen if the transgenic genes sustain in the gene pool forever? And what if the natural genes are lost? There are many other questions that emerge as we go deeper into this discussion. Hence, making transgenic organisms is an ethical concern. So what's the solution to this? There is no fixed solution for this, but yes, there are few regulatory bodies which glance at the various activities in the field of biotechnology. Now let's talk about one more hot topic in bioethics, and that is cloning. We know that cloning in biotechnology deals with the process of making exact copies of biomolecules or organisms. How about human cloning? The idea sounds cool. That is not so great in reality. Preparing human